Welcome to Diet Rebellion, the podcast that's here to help you break free from the chains of dieting and finally take control of your health, strength, and confidence. I'm Joe Hoye, your host and the founder of Diet Detox. After transforming the lives of thousands of women over 40 who have been trapped in the endless diet cycle, I'm here to show you a new way. One that focuses on eating for your body's needs, restoring your metabolism, and rebuilding your strength for life. Get ready for real, no bullshit conversations, expert insights, and actionable strategies that empower you to live diet-free and thrive. It's time to stop restricting and start rebuilding. Join the rebellion. Your journey starts now. Welcome back to another episode of Diet Rebellion. Today, we don't talk too much about weight loss, but we do talk a whole lot about personal development and you becoming the person that's going to lose the weight and most importantly, keep it off. Today's guest is Andrea Mondoux. She is a coach and speaker empowering women on their pursuit of wellness and happiness. Her expertise lies in assisting people recognize and reframe the narratives and stories they tell themselves regarding what they're capable of. Her true calling lies in guiding individuals through transformation one step at a time. And if you hang out till the end, she's going to reveal her 4-step process to you, accomplishing anything you want in life. And it's a whole lot easier than you think. So get ready and make sure you have a notebook around because you're going to want to learn. Andrea, welcome to Diet Rebellion. I'm really excited to dive in because from what I know about you, which as you just learned isn't much, I don't think you talk about weight loss a whole lot, but you do talk about other things that will circle back to weight loss. And so the reason you're here is because I think you have a massive gift or superpower that you're going to be able to help our audience with. So welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, that's such a lovely introduction. Thank you. Yeah, I'm a really big fan of the more you talk about the things that people don't talk about or that you weren't taught in school, or the more that you have like these really enlightening, positive conversations, it can create those ripple effects and measure, like the impact will become immeasurable and it will change the world. And I feel like that's what I'm here to do. So I'm really grateful to have this platform and everybody who's listening and to tell you all the good stuff.
I love it. Yeah, that's what we're after is, I'm assuming this is true for you too, but the mission I'm on is so meaningful to me that if I didn't get out there for a single day and spread this message in one way or another, I failed the day. And so I constantly want to be getting out there and helping other people in the way that I find meaningful. Do you find the same thing to be true?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I twofold. One, was put on this earth to help people, and two, have lived through a lot and I've learned a lot and, stuff that I wish I had learned sooner or I'm still learning and evolving. And so I just feel compelled to share that like every second of every day if I could.
Okay, this is perfect. So everybody listening, this is going to be a good podcast because for anybody that says, hey, I learned this thing, it took me way too long, and so I want to teach other people faster so they can catch up to where I am earlier is amazing. And then anybody that says, I have evolved, but I'm not done evolving is also amazing. We got a double whammy here. So Andrea, tell me and everybody listening who the hell you are. Like, who's Andrea?
Oh my gosh. How much time do you have? What do we have? Like 40 minutes?
Nailed it.
Okay. So I am actually a former social service frontline worker. So I always, like I said, felt like I had this compulsion to help people and to serve. And when I was 18, trying to figure out what the hell I wanted to do with my life, I was like, I'm going to go into social services. And that was a 2-year program. And I was, like I said, I was 18. And that was my first like toe dip into like personal growth and development. Because of course, one of my professors told me, and I will never forget this, you have to unpack your shit before you can help somebody unpack theirs. And I was like, whoa, that's super powerful. And so I learned the tools of how to support people in various, psychosocial crisis. And then I graduated and then I went on to work in frontline mental health. I don't know what it is, but I was always like really gravitated to like crisis work. So mental health, addictions, like homelessness, at risk of homelessness, hoarding. Like I did a lot of like really emotionally intensive work pretty early on in my career.
Did you grow up with any of that?
Yes and no, not as challenging as some people have had it. But I grew up with parents who split up and, all the feelings that kind of come along with that. And so I honestly, I think it's just like innately in my nature too, to help people. But I will say though, once I got pregnant with my first daughter and I went back to work, I was like, okay, I can't put all of this emotional energy out into other people. Like I need to reserve some of that for my child. And I also need to reserve some of that that for myself. So I was starting to realize that shift of like when you're pouring out, like at some point in time, like you have to kind of keep some energy sacred for you too, and for your family and the people around you. And so I went back into social services, but in a bit of a different role. And then from there, I transitioned into teaching community services. So I taught part-time at a second career college for 3 years. And also during that time, had been on my own weight loss journey, had achieved that success that I was looking for, and still felt empty. Didn't really realize it yet that there was like a missing link that I hadn't connected yet. But I knew I wanted to help people in that wellness journey because I had done it myself. So I took a holistic health coaching certification, and I told you this is a fucking life story to get me to
Let's
where
go.
I
That's what I
am.
asked for.
And so I took this certification. I knew I wanted to help people because let's face it, you and I both know, and probably most of the people listening to this too know that like what you eat and how you move your body are super important when it comes to wellness and living well and living optimally and being clear and all of these things. And obviously like maintaining a healthy body weight. But I also was very quickly starting to realize that the most important piece of that is how you speak to yourself and what goes on up here and, you know, what you're saying to yourself on a regular basis, the societal conditioning that you're subscribing to and believing as truth and like all of these things. And so my social service slash coaching evolution has now come to a place I call myself a transformation coach. And as a transformation coach, I help people to rewrite their inner narrative. I'm an author. I make author jokes all the time, like be the author of your own story and explore, you know, what you're telling yourself on a regular basis. Is it true? Is it not? Where did it come from? And if you don't like that internal narrative, that internal dialogue, you get to choose to rewrite it at any time you want. You just have to make that decision. And it's not easy. It's not easy by any stretch, but it can be simple with the right tools and support and accountability and all the things. I show people the way of all the things.
I absolutely love that. And I think it is really important of how you speak to yourself. But I think what's even more important, I think that we're going to tie this into the narrative rewriting portion, but it's also very important of what you speak to yourself, right? Like what you are, who you are, all those things. How does somebody start to rewrite their narrative?
Oh, that's a big question. You know, when I was obviously in school for social services, there was many different courses that helped you to show up and be a worker for people. And then when I was teaching, this was solidified for me. I taught a psychology course and I learned psychology and I learned a lot about the brain. And the brain is an insanely fascinating organ because it has so many systems and processes that it has to do in a day, like in every second that exists. It really looks for ways to shortcut and to autopilot and to just like do things without having to think about it. Because if you had to think about everything that you have to do in a day, like that would be exhausting. You wouldn't have time for anything else. And so a lot of that internal narrative and that internal dialogue is subconscious and it is like it reoccurs all the time without us even knowing it. And furthering that, what you say to yourself, or if you, whether you say something consciously or unconsciously, your brain just believes it to be truth, like right away, even if it's actually not truth or accurate. And so to back up to what your initial question was, which is like, how does somebody start that process? The first step of that is just like getting off of autopilot of your life in general and just listening. I use this tool with my clients a lot. It's called eavesdropping on your thoughts. And it's simply just like eavesdrop. Like, what do you say to yourself when you mess up? What do you say to yourself when you get up in the morning? What do you say to yourself when you're shopping or you're doing whatever or you're driving? Like, what sort of things are you thinking about in relation to yourself? Because you can't create any sort of change if you don't know what you want to shift and what you want to change. So the first step really is just like listening.
So you're helping them become conscious of their unconscious thoughts.
Basically, I guess, yeah.
I love that. I'm assuming that you're probably a big fan of Joe Dispenza.
You know, I've heard his name many times before, but I actually have never dove into his work that much.
You probably should.
Maybe.
So what you're saying is very, very in line with what he says and studies and preaches. And I love it because I couldn't believe exactly what you're saying any more than I do. That's what I see all the time is people have, I don't know, what is it, like 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day?
Oh yeah, it's an insane number. It's an insane number of thoughts.
And so if we had those every day, we would just, if we were conscious of everyone, we would just melt. Like we wouldn't survive. So we're just living basically Groundhog's Day unless we become conscious of that and then start to do something about it. And so,
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, like, this is really easy for you and I to say, because I'm sure that you walk around and the thoughts thoughts you have, you're pretty conscious of. And the same thing for me is true. But I think that most people, like you said, are on autopilot. So how do you start to become aware of your unconscious thoughts?
Well, okay, so one tool that can be really, really helpful, and of course, this is just like a small piece of that puzzle, right? So I often will look at like a holistic, like how do you manage your stress? What does your
Mm.
space look like? Like all of these other things too. But the mind is like again, it is like the main focus of all of these things. And so even just like keeping a journal of whether it's journaling like on paper, some people don't necessarily resonate with that. Maybe it's like notes in your phone, or maybe you like leave yourself little voice notes. Again, some of these things might feel weird to people who like don't do it as often, but I always say you can't bake a banana bread with a carrot cake recipe. So if you're trying to do the same thing over and expect a different result, well, then you're not going to have a different result. So you have to like
Insanity.
start you have to start to do things that maybe feel a little bit weird, or but like because like maybe you've never taken notice and like written down what those thoughts are. And so I recommend like keeping a journal. Usually when people reach out to me to work with me, I will bump that out by a couple weeks before we even start working together, because I want to have some sort of like foundation of like, hey, what's kind of going on for you? What are some of the things that keep coming up again? And the other thing is too is that a lot of people feel like really overwhelmed with like, oh, I don't know, I'm probably saying so many things. I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, what would I write down? I always say to people, and maybe people who are listening like can ask themselves this. It's like, but what if you knew? Like, what if you did know those thoughts that you're saying to yourself? Or what if you did know? Because I think a lot of people, women especially, like our intuition has been quieted. And it's like we've forgotten how to trust ourselves. And I think that again, a lot of, the failed diets or the failed changes that people are trying to make, some of that, the results of that are also rooted in like a lack of just self-trust and a lack of like confidence of being like, you know what, this is going to be hard, but I'm going to make it through this, right? It's like that internal dialogue of like, yeah, I've got this. I've done hard shit before. I can do hard things again. It's
Right.
like it's like it's almost like this. Honestly, this is what I found, and the big shift happened for me like when I did become a parent and I started to understand, because I used to speak horribly to myself. Again, like I said earlier, like I wasn't born like this, like I spent a lot of years feeling like absolute garbage about myself and talking to myself that way and having all of these very, very negative beliefs about my worth and about how much people cared about me and didn't care about me and my ability to be successful. And so I started to make that shift. I don't even know where I was going with this, but I started to make that shift when I had my daughter. And it's just over time you start to, oh yeah, this is what I was saying, because I didn't always like have these random conversations with myself, but it's like starting to rebuild that relationship. I'm back now. I know what I was saying. Rebuilding, I always come back. Rebuilding that relationship with yourself is like the most important. We always focus on the people around us, which of course we should be doing. But we don't spend enough time working on that relationship with ourselves. And that includes the way we speak to ourselves, the way we take care of ourselves. Do we treat ourselves, nourish ourselves, move ourselves well? Like all of those things. It boils down to the way that your relationship with yourself is.
Without you, nothing else exists, right?
Mm.
And so I don't understand why people have such a hard time prioritizing themselves. Look, I get it. I'm not a mom. Also, listening to me, you understand I'm never going to be a mom. But it doesn't matter. Like, if you don't take care of yourself and you dig yourself into a hole, not only are you not going to have you, but your son or your daughter's not going to have you. So you should
Mm-hmm.
probably take a little bit of time every day and take care of you. I'm curious, though, for you, Andrea, when you started becoming conscious of the unconscious thoughts and you started shifting into knowing your self-worth and knowing your content and trusting yourself, how'd you see your life change?
Well, it didn't happen all at once, because as much as I was creating like those shifts and starting to notice, things that I was saying to myself, starting to examine like maybe those things aren't working for me anymore. I didn't notice like a big shift in my life right away, because I was kind of like going through like the integration myself and like a trial and error too, right? It's like, okay, I've learned some of these things. I want to do things differently. Okay, I'm going to try it out with my partner, or maybe I'm going to try it out with my coworker. Try it out being like maybe it's putting up a boundary.
Sure.
Or maybe it's like somebody asks you something and you're like, oh, I would typically respond this way, but like maybe I'm going to start responding this way. So some of the changes that I saw, I would say they started within my home. So like in my relationship. So I've been with my husband since I was like 18 years old. And we've been married for almost 12 years, together for like almost 20. It's insane. And so we've grown a lot together, right? And as I was growing, it was like was, starting to see like me speaking up a little bit more or like me, doing things a little bit differently. And it's like the asking of the questions of like, oh, like this is new, like what's going on? Or like the sharing of the information. Another big thing that I saw change was the way that I viewed okay, so I mentioned earlier I was on a weight loss journey and
Mhm.
at that time it was totally vanity focused and it was very much like, oh, I want to lose weight because I feel like I'll be happier when I lose weight. And so I accomplished that. And like I said, I was like, okay, I still feel the
Now
same.
what?
Now what? Yeah. And after I had Clara, my older daughter, I had still had that mentality of like, okay, I need to get like my pre-baby body back, And so I was like moving and being really restrictive in my eating because I wanted to get skinny again. And so another thing that I really found has shifted for me is just this newfound simple, pure joy in just moving my body and being active and like seeing what it can do and becoming more comfortable in it. Like I am by no stretch a small woman. Like I am almost 6 feet. I am
Hmm.
250 pounds, but I am very strong. And for a long time, I looked at that number because of societal conditioning, right? And I was like, I didn't feel as feminine or as womanly because I'm not what is perceived to be, or not perceived, presented to be as like the beautiful woman, and so that really also impacted my self-worth and the way that I saw myself. And so, just in the choices that I make to move my body, it's a different way that I look at exercise. It's a different way that I look at eating. And I don't, to me, there's like no good or bad foods anymore. It's like I know which ones are going to fuel me and make me feel better. And I gravitate to those because I fucking feel better. You know
Right.
what I mean? But I will also eat the things that I like and I don't feel shame or guilt around them. It's like, but this, I have to tell you, Joe, and everyone listening, this has been a process. Like
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to hear this and think like, oh, great. Like if I just start doing what she said, like it'll happen overnight. Like this has been a journey of like 9 years of unlearning and relearning new ways of looking at and doing things. And as my self-confidence grew, then I tolerated less shit from people and I spoke up for what I wanted more and I put up boundaries and I showed up differently in friendships and released some friendships that were not serving me well. Like there was just the ripple effect of making some of these small choices, or actually they're not small, some of these big choices. It just like those small changes continue to ripple out in the world around me. And it's really cool because like I said earlier, it's never done. I'm still growing. Like I'm going to go read about Joe Dispenza and I'm going to learn more. Do you know what I mean? Like
Good.
the learning is never done. But for me, the biggest shift has been like the focus of it. And it's been for no one else but for me. And that has been a really big shift of like, okay, well, I don't feel guilty about this. I'm going to show up for me. And then I can look at how I can serve people now. Like I'm running retreats in Punta Cana and hosting live events and coaching women and helping women write in books and share their stories and empowering them. It's just been such a cool evolution of how focusing on yourself, what the ripple effects of that can be.
Yeah, I love this. So I have a feeling that many people don't understand the amount of gold that you just shared. I mean, I took like 3 different notes on directions I want to go, but I'm really glad that you said, once I lost this weight, once I got to where I want my body, I'm going to be happy. And then you did. You lost the weight, you got to where you wanted to be, and oh my God, I'm not happier. So then I'm not saying you did this, but I see a lot of people do this. I've been coaching for 7 years. They set that goalpost, that specific goalpost related to their body image further. And they're like, okay, well, that didn't do it, but maybe if I fit back into my wedding dress, then I'll be happier.
Mhm.
And the truth is, you're moving the wrong goddamn goalpost. Like,
Yeah.
you're not even looking at the right target. Yes, is it great to be healthy and have energy and function well and be a great role model for your daughters? Yeah, of course.
And
But
it doesn't hurt to like if you put all that work into like wanting to have a smaller body and you've got like there's nothing wrong with wanting to have a weight loss goal, right? But it has to be more than that.
yep.
It has to be more than that.
I was just telling, so what you just explained is very similar to these 4 week challenges I run, where I figure out the calories for them, I do the exercise program for them, I take all the guesswork out, and then I focus on personal development so they can become you, basically. And I was just telling a client on a call the other day, I was like, hey, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I think you can get to your goal on the scale. But if you don't focus on the shit that we just talked about for the past hour, that goal is not going to mean
Mhm.
anything. And you're still going to be sheepish and shy and not have self-worth till you face this other stuff. And
Yeah.
I could see that it hit with her, but it's amazing to hear it from you because you've walked that path. Gosh, I love that.
I have this workshop that I do. It's actually my most requested workshop, and it's called the Wheel of Balance. And it's not a tool that I created, but it's one that I have kind of morphed into my own and use. And I alluded to it a little bit earlier with that like holistic approach. But essentially, there are really like 8 components that make up who we are as humans. And unless we are actively pouring into all of those areas, we're there's always going to feel off balance. We're always going to feel like something's missing. So it's like I said, the way we eat, the way we move our body, the amount of rest that we get, the way we manage our stress, how we feel in our relationships and our communication, if our needs are being met, if we can ask for what we want, if we have some sort of connection to like spirit or religion or higher power or whatever it means for people, like your physical environment, growing as a person, like we're meant to be growing. And so all of those things working together, having that mindful awareness, that's what creates fulfillment, not losing 50 pounds. That can be a part of it, but there's so much more. There's so much more to life, man. Jeez.
So much more. My clients that are
Work
listening to
done.
this, well, I'm just agreeing with you massively. My clients that are listening to this are probably just smiling or laughing or nodding or something because you said the wheel of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have my 4 dimensions, and I think that every single person is made up of 4 dimensions. And what you just explained basically is more granular than what I have, but it's the same thing. So we have body, right? How you look,
Mm-hmm.
feel, function, your level of health. We have being, your connection with yourself and a higher power.
Oh, yeah.
We have connection, your relationships with your friends, your family, your kids, your husband. And then we have business. And business is your career, but also your service, like how you serve and help other people. And so we're doing the same shit. I love this. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you. Well, so this is the thing is like I said, you don't learn this stuff in school. So I'm writing another book right now because I can never not be writing. And the first book that I wrote was really broken down into like excuses and movement and managing your anxiety and goal setting, like very kind of like entry level stuff. And this next book that I'm writing is more of like the stuff you're not taught in school, like the importance of like getting outside and like the nature therapy that exists out there, boundaries, relationships, like your inner story, right? Like stop living their story and start living your own. Like those are like next level. It's like you've reached the first level in the video game. If you got all these things and you feel like those are unlocked, then you move up to the next one and you're like, okay, this is how you really can live, like reach your maximum potential that we all want to. I always start my workshops with saying like, who wants to be happier, healthy, and more well? Not one person can't raise their hand.
Right.
Everyone does. But there's a lot of things that go into that. And we haven't been given, it's like that knowledge is like under lock and key somewhere. And we haven't been like taught that or given that. So like you and I have this gift that we have the knowledge, we've learned it. We have to share it with other people so that they can like live their best lives too and feel empowered to be the authors of and in charge of their own story.
You know what I think the problem is? I think the problem is that, in at least the ways that I teach this, I don't know about you, but for many people, it's just initially too woo-woo. Like it's too spiritual, it's too whatever. And they're like, you know what? I'm just going to do my next diet. It's like, no, that's not going to work. And do you find that that is true or do you disagree?
Yes, to a certain degree, but I also feel like it's hard work. And I think people shy away from, well, I shouldn't say they shy away from hard work because they'll go bust their ass in the gym and they will be like really strict with what they're eating, which is also hard. But it's harder to unpack your stuff, right? It's harder to look in the mirror and say, how do I really feel about you? How much do I really love you? And if the answer is not much, then to start that journey because you don't know where to start. You don't know where to go and it can be really hard. And then if you like layer in, childhood experiences, any trauma that you've been through, this is where the social worker in me comes out. If you layer that kind of stuff, right? Family dynamics, your societal conditioning, depending on what kind of home you grew up in or what country you grew up in, like you layer all of that stuff in and it just makes it more and more complex and hard. And it's also stuff that feels very out of our control, which it is to a certain degree until we bring that back in. But it feels a lot easier to be like, I'm just going to go to the gym 7 days a week than to be like, I'm going to unpack what happened to me when I was 10 that now shows up in all the relationships and experiences that I have now. That's what I think.
No, you're completely right. I'm glad you said that and you worded it really well. Looking in the mirror is hard in a different way than avoiding carbs or going to the gym 7 days a week. Conquering your ego, that little voice inside your head that tries so hard to do what's right and protect you, but is actually wrong, is so hard. And
it is.
Again, going back to Joe Dispenza, you're going to relate so much to this guy.
I'm going to become his #1 fan.
Yeah, you're going to love him. I swear. People simply go back to what's familiar because familiar is comfortable in one way or not. Like, yes, you might be an emotional eater and overweight and not like how you look, feel, or function, but you've survived for the past 20 years that way. And so you'll continue surviving that way. Whereas if you create this change, you don't know what's on the other side of it and you don't know if you'll survive it. So your ego tells you to go back to what's comfortable.
Yeah. And like truthfully, I mean, the more that you do things that feel scary or uncomfortable, or you face something and you're like, oh, I'm okay, the more that fuels your inner confidence, right? That it gives you new evidence of a different belief of like, oh, I actually can do hard things. Like I used to be terrified. You might not believe this, but I used to be terrified of speaking, of like giving presentations, of going out there. And then as I started to like do this work and unpack some of this stuff, I remember I was working full time for the charity that I worked for 10 years, Frontline. And I was like looking for a part-time job and I saw the job for this teaching position. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to talk every day. People are going to be looking to me to know the answers and to explain I taught 4 hours a day, every day. I had to come up with all that shit. I mean, I had some of it given to me. But anyway, the point of that is I was like, this job really scares me. I was like, well, I guess I have to apply for it then. And guess what? That really supported me in my teaching career. It helped me to move through that story that I had that I was not good at public speaking. I wouldn't know what to say. I would fumble on my words. And I still do sometimes because I'm a human. But you have to do things in order to feel more confident to do other things. And then the things you do get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you look at yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even recognize this woman because of thank you to that past woman for doing all this stuff to get me to where I am here.
Yep, I love that. One thing that you just said, which actually leads me to my last question, but you said you had a ton of fear and you used that fear as a signal or a notification that that is what you had to do. And oftentimes leaning into that fear, that level of discomfort is the thing that takes us to the next best version of ourselves. But I'm curious, do you have any frameworks or rules that you like every single person to follow that you think a listener on here could start using today and start to see evolution in their life?
Yes, the first thing that came to me is a framework that is in my first book. It's called The 4 C's to Confidence. It was actually developed by a strategic coach named Dan Sullivan. So the 4 C's to confidence is it's like anytime we're doing something new or we're faced with something that scares us, we usually don't want to do it until we have the confidence to do it, right? It's like, okay, I'll do it when I feel ready. But the reality is that of those 4 C's, confidence is the fourth one. So that one comes when you do the first C, which is you have the courage to do it. And then you're committed to doing it. So you have to be like, okay, I can do this. I'm committed to it. Let's do it. And then you start to feel more capable because you've done the thing. And then that fourth C comes, which is the confidence. So my framework and my slogan is just like, just fucking do it. Do it scared, do it unsure, ask questions. Like all of those things are safe and allowed, and you'll learn so much. And on the other side of it, you'll be like, holy cow, I did that. Like, that's cool. I did that. Because the reality is that you can hire any coach that you want. You can hire a coach, you can read all the books, you can go to the things, but you ultimately are the one that gets up every day and does the thing and makes the change and stays committed. And so those decisions have to come from you, and you have that power inside of you. You just have to like remember that it's there. You just need somebody to like bring her back out, you know?
I love that. That's so perfect. Amazing way to wrap this up, because now everybody can go and do the shit and apply this to their life and see change. And if they do see change and they want to spend more time with you and continue that evolution with you, where would they do that? Like, how can they find you?
I'm basically the balance bliss everywhere. So on Instagram, I'm the .balance.bliss. My website's the balance bliss. I do have a podcast. I haven't put anything out in a while, but there's like 150 pieces of goodness there that you can listen to. And depending on when this episode comes out, I do like, if you want to go big in 2025, in April, I'm hosting a 4-day exclusive women's retreat in Punta Cana that has 4 spots left. And it's going to be insanely transformative, restorative, lots of releasing, lots of healing, and lots of connection. So you can do that too if you want to go big or just work one-to-one as a coach.
I love it. I will put both those links inside the show notes. And
Thank
Andrea,
you.
thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.